Welcome everyone. We have a special guest today with us, Curt Witynski from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. Thank you, Curt, for coming.
My pleasure, Ryan. Thank
All
you.
the way from beautiful Madison, Wisconsin.
Yes, indeed. It was a good ride.
Good, good. So we're here today to kind of talk about Dark Store. This
Right.
Dark Store theory. What is it? There's an advisory referendum on the November 6th ballot here in
Right.
Barron County. So
Right.
people should probably know what this is all about and what they're going to be asked
Yes.
about. So could you kind of
Sure.
introduce those
Yeah.
in the audience who might not know what dark store theory is?
Yeah, so the referendum question will ask people, do you support asking the legislature to repeal or end these dark store loopholes? These are tax strategies that commercial property owners, mainly big box stores, but also commercial properties that are leased. So leased commercial space, like typically a Walgreens or a CVS, their business model calls for them leasing their businesses. And as part of their lease, they they pay the property taxes and therefore can challenge them. So dark store loopholes really refers to two concepts, two of these tax strategies. The first one is we call dark store. It's an argument that a tax attorney would make for typically a big box store like, name one, Menards, Home Depot, Target, you get the picture.
Sure.
So the tax attorneys will come to the assessor and say, you should not assess our property as if it's an open business and it's doing well, it's in a good location. You should assess our property as if it's this closed or vacant or dark property, like a Kmart, say, that closed a couple of years ago, and it's in a less popular retail space now. And their argument is that because no one's going to really buy our property as a going business, we place limitations on who can purchase our property anyway, so no future retailer is going to be able to buy it. So really, it's just a building, like this closed building, and that's how you should assess us. And so then usually that goes along with that argument usually means you should assess us about 50% less than what you currently are. So from 10 million down to 5 million or something like that. Those are just made up numbers, but that's just to give an example. Courts in Wisconsin have not fully bought into that theory, but our legislation is designed to make it crystal clear that argument is just not going to work at all in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's very helpful to codify existing case law or existing administrative rules just so everyone knows here's what the lay of the land is in Wisconsin. And that's what we're trying to do. So we have a piece of legislation was introduced last session, had lots of support. It would have closed this dark store loophole, but basically saying when an assessor uses comparable properties to value a property, looks at other properties of similar size and age, has to be within the same economic segment, which means same size, relatively same age, maybe same retail area, and maybe a similar location within the community, and most importantly, it's not within your same economic segment to be dark or closed if you're open. That's basically what the bill says. Seems like common sense. And we had 84 co-sponsors. That means 84 legislators signed on to the bill out of 132. So it's broad bipartisan support. And in the end, it didn't pass, never got a vote. And I'll explain why in a little bit. But I want to shift to the other tax strategy that's being used that we put under the heading of dark store loopholes is a bill we call, or a strategy we call the Walgreens strategy, after a Wisconsin Supreme Court decision in 2008, basically decided in favor of this argument that Walgreens and Madison made, and now every commercial property that leases is trying to fall under this exemption. And I won't go into great detail of this, but suffice to say, the argument was that it's inappropriate for assessors to look at the actual lease that they're paying the owner of the property, because they argue that lease let's say it's $5,000 a month, that lease is, they argue, is over and above market rate. And so you have to go to other stores, what they sold for, or other lease amounts that other nearby businesses are paying. That theirs is above market, and therefore it can't serve as the basis for determining the value of their property for property tax purposes. So the best way to explain that is this. This case has evolved to stand for this proposition, that even though a Walgreens or a CVS or some other commercial property that's leased is selling, that property is selling on mainly the investment market for $4 to $8 million. And this is what happened the last 2 years. This is very popular properties for investors to purchase, like real estate investment trusts. And they're selling in Wisconsin for $4 to $8 million. They're being assessed because of this court decision for $2.1 to $2.8 million. So no other property gets this same treatment. So if you sold your house, or I sold my house, and that sale price is pretty much in the neighborhood of my neighbor's properties, that would be the best evidence of what the value is for property tax purposes. If I sold it for $200,000, then the assessor's probably going to say, well, it's worth $190,000 to $200,000, $210,000 for sure. So that doesn't apply in this Walgreens situation, leased commercial space. And we have a bill that would just say it's appropriate for assessors to take into account the actual lease rates when valuing a property. It's one of the factors they can use when trying to determine the fair market value. So,
I mean, even the dark store, you wouldn't use that in a residential situation.
No,
I mean,
no, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have these two bills that were introduced last session. We got very far in the process. They were both popular. The Walgreens bill had 61 co-sponsors. In the end, leadership declined to schedule the bills for a vote. So they never got to the floor. They never got all the way across the goal line. And that's what we're trying to do this session. And why is this important?
Yeah.
Why would anyone
Why do I care?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why do you care? Why do I care? So our association, which represents all the cities and villages in the state, and our board of directors, our mayors and village presidents, they're very concerned about shifting these tax strategies. When one property owner or sets of property owners pay less in property taxes, everyone else has to pick up the slack and they pay more. Because the way property tax system works is the city levies a certain amount. They need, let's say, $1 million or whatever their budget calls for. They need $1 million. They're going to levy $1 million. What we're arguing, and then the following year, though, because the state strictly controls how much they can increase their levy from year to year, it's going to be $1 million basically every year. What changes is who pays that amount among all the property taxpayers. How's that pie divided, that $1 million pie? And when commercial property owners like a Dark Store or Walgreens pay less, homeowners and other property taxpayers have to pay more. That's basically so our concern, our association's concern is that homeowners in Wisconsin pay a considerable amount of property taxes, as you know. And when you look at the statewide property tax levy and you see the pie of the whole state, the property taxes that go to schools and counties and everyone, all statewide, 68 to 70% is paid by homeowners. So they're already bearing most of the burden. The remainder, 30% is covered by agriculture, commercial, and manufacturing. We don't want more of that 30% that's covered being shifted over to the 68, 70% homeowners. Why? Because, munis and school districts and counties will still get the levy we need to pay for local services, but we just think it's imperative that that system be fair and equitable, and that everyone contribute their fair share to the cost of local services. Because if people feel like they're not getting a good deal, why are they paying more, for the same level of services than these other properties? It'll break down, and it'll be hard to justify this property tax system that we live under. That's our real fear. So that's why we're working on this, and that's why we had some really good legislators who are our authors, and they intend to introduce the bills with us, work with us again next session, and we're trying to make this issue more in the public's eye and making it more a discussion by candidates during this fall election cycle, including the gubernatorial candidates. So that's why we're out talking about this issue. And yeah.
And the league has a monthly magazine,
Right.
and you have checked in with both of the gubernatorial candidates. Both of them want to close this.
Right. So gubernatorial candidate Evers has said point blank, I will include these two bills in my first budget if I'm elected. So first thing the governor will do, whoever is governor in beginning January, is put together the state budget for the next 2 years. So they'll have to introduce a budget in February. And Tony Evers already said, I'll include these dark store loophole closings in my budget. Governor Walker hasn't said that. Governor Walker has said, though, that if legislation reaches his desk, he'd be willing to sign it. So he has said that. You know, one thing our association did at the end of last session when the bills failed, our board of directors basically had a reflective moment and said among themselves, should we kind of give up, we lost, or should we try and kind of pick up our efforts to educate the public in advance of next session to see if we can put some political pressure on the legislature to pass this legislation. So our board said, let's double down on our efforts and put together some kind of campaign to educate the public about this issue. And so over the summer, we pooled some resources for the counties association, the towns, various, our membership and our reserves, and hired a company to put together a digital ad campaign that came up with some videos, used a little humor, but we also created an educational kind of description of this issue because it's fairly complex. And it's like a 3.5-minute video it's called a whiteboard video where someone's drawing out the explanation while a narrator's talking. And I thought it turned out really well. And so I encourage people to go to darkstoreloopholes.com and take a look at those videos, and if they want to become a little more educated about the issue.
Yeah, there's plenty of information on the league's website, on the Dark Store Loopholes website.
Right.
If you need to learn more.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to ask.
One thing I was going to say is that I forgot to say was, your county's having the referendum, this advisory referendum,
correct,
on this issue, and that it's advisory, so it doesn't have any legal impact. You know, people get kind of confused. Well, if I'm voting on this, what does it mean? There's no change the law that's going to occur as a result of this vote. Sure. It's really a communication to the legislature that, hey, this is an issue that we're concerned about, citizens are. So not only your county, but 16 others, so 17 counties in total are having similar advisory referenda this November, and then 5 cities are. And one city had an advisory referendum at the August primary, and that was West Dallas, and it was 91% of the voters said, yeah, we would like the legislature to take action on this issue.
91%.
So 91%, yeah.
You wonder those 9 other percentage people,
right?
They're okay with it.
Yeah.
Or maybe they didn't understand it.
Maybe they didn't understand it, or also keep in mind the business community is not supportive of our efforts.
Sure.
So Wisconsin Manufacturing and Commerce, which is the statewide Chamber of Commerce, the various commercial property chains that are using these loopholes, naturally they want to maintain status quo. So there is strong opposition from certain quarters, and legislative leaders heard that, and that's one of the reasons why the bills didn't get voted on. So, yeah, we're out there trying to educate people, but there are other parties who have a different perspective. And maybe those 9% heard that perspective too. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Curt, anything else that we need to cover?
I think.
November 6th,
sorry,
go
that was
out
a monologue.
And no, that was great.
Yeah. Okay.
You know this issue much better than I do, but
sure.
I know where to look up more information.
Yeah.
And so do our audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so thank you for coming in.
Yeah, my pleasure.
But,
Thanks, Ryan.
You bet. And definitely make sure to vote on November 6th and educate yourself for the Dark Store Loophole advisory referendum question on the ballot.
Terrific.